All right, welcome into Starting Nine here on a Wednesday. I'm Ethan Skolnick. Producer today is Manny Chang. Make sure you get the comments up because I do not have a guest today. We're going guestless for most of the playoffs, so I can take your questions here. We are sponsored by our friends over at All Pro Construction Builders. Our guy Danny, very excited, was asking the Heat questions on our text string yesterday before the game. He's a huge Heat fan, but more importantly, he's a fan of making sure that your house does not blow away. Hurricane season is around the corner, so you got to protect your home or business. Reach out to All Pro Construction Builders. They specialize in the impact windows and doors for residential and commercial properties. We know what you're spending on houses these days, right? Okay. Well, make sure it's still up after a hurricane because we know some of those are coming because we haven't had a big one in a while. All Pro Construction Builders, state certified, licensed, and insured general contractor. They service Miami-Dade, Monroe, but also Broward County. I always have to mention that because we have gotten them some folks from Broward County. They also use, as we know, just locally made products, American-made, family-owned and operated. You'll deal with the owner from start to finish. That's Danny. You reach out to him at 305-484-4429. That's 305-484-4429. You'll get a free estimate. And also, if you mention 5 reasons, you'll get a 10% discount. That's the Instagram page there. Check them out, All Pro Construction Builders. They will show you some of the before and after pictures with all of their work. Again, it's at 305-484-4429. They do the carpentry, the additions, the renovations, but mostly I always mention here the impact windows and doors because, yeah, we've gotten lucky for a while, but that's probably not going to last. All right, the Heat didn't get lucky last night. 35-point win. So if you had Heat minus 34 on Better Edge last night, we congratulate you. You still covered. And what I want to talk about today quickly before I get to your questions are adjustments. And a lot of times, we talk about adjustments just in the sense of strategic, right? And there were a lot of those last night, all right? Our guy Brady Hawk, who has not been disappeared, by the way, I've located him this morning. He got a little too close with a strategy question to Eric Spoelstra last night, but I think it told you some of the things that fans have talked about that Spoelstra actually, used last night. One of which was we've talked all season about kind of this Bam soft switching, right? Well, they didn't do that last night as much, and that's kind of what Brady was getting to. So that was a defensive adjustment. Another defensive adjustment last night. Dan Devine hit on this. Tyrese Maxey has been a bit of a problem. Jimmy Butler guarded him a lot more last night. And if you look at, I trust Dan Devine's reporting here, 37 plays that Jimmy guarded Tyrese Maxey, he did not have a point or an assist. That's another adjustment. We talk about adjustments on offense and in rotation. Well, Duncan Robinson did play last night, but they didn't run anything for him. He was sort of out there as a decoy, I guess. Caleb Martin did play last night, which meant they went 10 deep because Dwayne Dedmon got some early minutes. Caleb Martin played a role. When they started to pull away a little bit, there was a little Caleb Martin sequence. We've seen those throughout the season. He got a steal. He got to the basket. Doesn't have to be a lot, but I think he needs to play minutes every game. And, of course, another adjustment, the key adjustment, was making the decision to sit Kyle Lowry down. And I think we can say safely now that if Kyle hadn't played in games 3 and 4, the Heat probably win one of those games. I mean, this was a circumstance of a player actually hurting his team by coming back. They made the right decision last night. Kyle was active and into it on the bench and in the huddle. He actually led the huddle on the court after introductions. So seemed like he was on board with the decision, even though I know he wanted to play. I give him credit for trying to play in this series. It didn't help the Heat. They were better off with just kind of the average Gabe Vincent performance last night, which was fine, than they were with Kyle being out there but not really being out there. So these are all adjustments that were made. But there's another kind of adjustment, which is an expectations adjustment. And obviously Heat fans are doing this today because we went from no guts, what's going to happen here, everything's blowing up and all the rest of this, to now 35-point win. We're going to go close this thing out easily. I don't think it's going to be that easy. Although I will say this, okay? I didn't like the way the Sixers were talking last night. Joel Embiid is a good interview, okay? I enjoy being in. I was in the press conference last night. I think he had a point when it came to MVP voting, not about the vote itself, but about who votes and all the rest of that. And he was asked the question, so it's not like he brought up the MVP. But what he said about playing now and the fact that if he doesn't play, he's going to be considered soft. Excuse me. And if he does play, everybody's going to get on him for not playing well enough. To me, is the difference in the temperament between these two teams. Why does Joel Embiid care about what anybody thinks? You would never hear Jimmy Butler say that. So I got the sense last night that they in the Philadelphia room are playing to the media and the Heat are playing to win the series in advance. It's probably simplistic, but that's the way that they both came off. The other adjustment, I asked Doc Rivers last night what they're going to do about Jimmy Butler, and he indicated that, they may have to do something different. It did not mean anything nefarious. People got the wrong idea from my tweet. It just means they're going to need to double him. And that would be a major change because they've been doubling Tyler Herro in this series. So if they start to double Jimmy Butler, he might pick them apart. All right, let's get to some of the comments. Again, Manny, we appreciate you producing here tonight. I'm not going to try to pronounce that handle, but we'll go from here. Do you think winning the championship is sustainable with the way Herro has been playing this series? If he doesn't show up, he's gone. I said last night it had to be a Herro Bam game. It really wasn't. Bam was good. I thought Bam was good. Tyler had 1 point until the fourth. Then he seemed to find something in the fourth quarter. He had 9 points in the fourth, but more so I like the approach because they are doubling him. I mean, every time he gets a foot in the paint, it's three guys, okay? So I kept saying during the game, like to those that were sitting around, I said, he's got to shoot the floater. He's got to shoot the floater before the help comes. He started to do that in the fourth quarter. Maybe he found something. Now, there's the longer, bigger, issue here about whether or not he can be a top 3 player on a championship, on a consistent championship contender. And to that end, whether you're going to max him out, because if he can't be, then you can't max him out. So I do think there's a lot on the line here for Tyler. I still think there's going to be breakout game. I don't think he's having a hopeless postseason like we've seen some of those. I just think he's struggling to kind of find his way, particularly with the coverage he's seeing, but also with the new rotation where he's sharing the ball a lot with Victor Oladipo, which looked a little bit better last night at times, but it's not something he had to do during the regular season when it was his bench. So long story short, he needs to be better. I don't think what he did last night means he's not getting maxed, but I do think Pat Riley is going to take all of this stuff into consideration in the offseason and going forward. All right, let's get to the next one, Manny. What about Brady spilling Spo's defensive plan? Yeah, well, look, I've been around a long time. They're not used to a ton of strategy questions there. They tend to get more narrative questions. We encourage, at 5R to kind of dig into what they're doing while knowing that they don't really want to tell you. But I can say that I've had an exchange with a head coach since that was amusing. And I can tell you they appreciate Brady's keen eye for strategy. I'll just leave it at that. So, yes, he did tap into it. There's no question there was a change made in terms of the way that they were going to, essentially handle the switching, particularly with Bam. And we're going to encourage Brady and Alex to continue to ask those questions because to me, they're more interesting than how does it feel to get a big win at home in front of the fans? It's not really telling you anything. Okay, let's go. Alan, it just seems better with Gabe and Depot there. I don't understand why they force Lowry in Philly. I don't know that they force Lowry in Philly. Kyle wanted to play. Okay. And I think when, you're talking about, potential future Hall of Famer, a champion, a 6-time All-Star, the guy you're paying $30 million to this year, like if he says he wants to play and the doctors clear him to a certain degree, you let him play. I think it was a mistake. We were skeptical of it at the time. I thought that they would wait until they lost a game to put him in. And instead, it kind of seemed like they put him in with a lead because, A, he wanted to, but also they had a bit of a cushion. But we found that they didn't really have a cushion at all, and he just wasn't helping. So I would not expect him to see him the rest of this series. I think even if there's a game 7 at home, you won't see him. And there's a possibility that the next round could start Sunday. I was told that last night. It's not likely, but it's possible. Of course, either Milwaukee or Boston would have to win the next two because their game 6 is on Friday night. I don't know that you'll see Kyle Lowry for a game. If it was a game 1 Sunday or a game 7 Sunday, I would be surprised. All right, next one. Yeah, the deer. Thoughts on Duncan Robinson stint? The gravity was there. It was. The Heat weren't, looking to exploit it in the way that they usually do. I thought Duncan looked a little lost out there, which is understandable. Again, different rotation, hasn't played in a while. I put this on our off the floor feed before the game where you do get some exclusive content, but Ruthie Polinsky was doing her stand-up during warm-ups, and she was talking about Duncan during it because Duncan was behind her, because we know what the rhythm of warm-ups is going to be now and who comes out. It's always Haywood Highsmith first with Omer, and then it's typically Duncan and Bam, and then Caleb comes out with Strus and Vincent, and then Herro is usually, and then Tucker is after that. So we kind of know what the order is. And so it was Duncan's time. Bam had just come out, was just about to come out, but Duncan was out there, was behind him, and Ruthie was doing her stand-up and talking about Duncan during it, and Duncan laughed and goes, "Let's not do this. I haven't played a minute in the series." So, look, he's having a sense of humor about it. I know he's frustrated. I don't think last night was indicative necessarily of the way that they're going to use him going forward. But we did see Bam come in when Duncan was in there, and that's part of the point. I think that they want to create some of that synergy between the two of them again. But Duncan, there's a little gravity, but I don't think that, in any way he was impactful in a good or a bad way last night. All right. Ronald. Yes, Bam had a bigger impact in the game than the box score numbers would suggest. We want this Bam every night. That's a great point. And I don't want to get caught up in the box score numbers with Bam. I really don't, because sometimes he has bigger box score numbers and I don't think he had the impact. And I'm talking about on offense. To me, it's level of aggression. Like that's really it. Like, I don't care how it comes. Like, it could come, level of aggression could mean shooting the face-up jumper as soon as he's got the opportunity, so he's keeping the defense honest. Or it could mean some of the stuff we've seen that I really like, which is that him attacking the rim and the quick twitch, going straight back up, offensive rebounds of his own misses. I'm fine with all of it. He just has to, you have to feel him there. And I felt I think the last 2 games he's been better. I think games 4 and game 5, it's not the Bam that everybody wants, or maybe we projected, and that there's going to be a 30 and 15 game in here. That Bam, though, if the shooters are playing well, is good enough. Okay. I think what we saw last night. And obviously you got the unexpected kind of boost from Strus, and that made a huge difference here. All right, let's get some more of them. Aaron, should Heat fans mute their TVs during a TNT broadcast game? They were 2 pro Sixers. Bally Sports should do the second round as well. Trust me, the guys at Bally Sports, I talked to Eric Reed after the game last night. Look, the Heat broadcasters would love to be doing this series. Okay. That's just always the way it's been. It's always the first round. The Heat used to do more, than they do now in terms of incorporating the broadcasters in the other events, and whether it's a post show or anything like that in the other rounds. There hasn't been as much this year. I didn't hear the TNT broadcast last night. Obviously, to me, it's at this point, the guys who seem to know the team obviously JJ does. I know people are upset at JJ, but I mean, whatever. He switched his pick. But the guys who seem to know the team, I think if you caught Stan on a broadcast, you'd be okay. I think Jimmy Jackson does his homework. I'm not going to speak to the rest of them. I mean, obviously, if ESPN was doing a game and you had Mark Jones, you'd be happy about that too. But the national thing is not going to change, everybody. And look, I know everybody's annoyed at me for focusing on it, but I bet you when I flipped ESPN here today, it's going to be all about what Harden did do last night. It is amazing to me. Jimmy Butler has been a top 5 player in the playoffs, and as many tweeted at me last night, it ain't 5, 4, 3, or 2, okay, for a lot of folks, okay? I mean, to me, you could make an argument the only player who's been better in the playoffs from a two-way perspective is Giannis, okay? You make a case for Luka, obviously, offensively. Chris Paul's, had tremendous games and had a couple of down games. And yet I have not seen a single segment on ESPN, TNT, or anywhere. How is this team going to stop Jimmy Butler? That's why I asked the questions last night. I asked Embiid and I asked Doc. I wanted to see if any of that would finally get played on national media. It won't be. Okay. They don't view Jimmy as a superstar. They don't. And they don't view him as a personality either, which that is the one that blows my mind because we're comparing Jimmy's personality to some of these other guys. Jimmy has one. Okay. All right, let's go from here. Sean Spencer, everyone last game was talking about Vintage Harden is back. The next game he gets outscored by Gabe Vincent. He almost got outscored by Haywood Highsmith. Haywood hit a couple of threes late in the game. Here's my thing on Harden, okay? I give him credit for what he did in game 4, but I said it after that. It's all step back 28-footers. There's going to be enormous variance in that. Like the idea of we're forgetting what James Harden was, okay? Like him or don't like him or respect the way he takes care of his body or not. When James Harden was putting up 50-plus point performances on a consistent basis in Houston, he was getting to the rim all the time, not just either flailing for fouls or taking step backs from 28 feet. He made his step backs in game 4 at the end. That's all we're talking about, okay? But, you can't count. That's not a strategy to win a series. That you can't count on that all the time. He might do it again in game 6. He may, all right? With all the attention being paid to Embiid. But, see, to me, Tyrese Maxey was more of a concern in this series because Tyrese Maxey is attacking. He's getting your guy. It's different. They did a great job on Maxey last night. Harden is he's not a max player anymore. Is he still a high IQ player and a great passer and all the rest of that? Can he hurt you? Absolutely. But this idea that he was back, that's disrespectful to the old James Harden, who could do a whole lot more than this. All right, what else we got? Yes. All right. Herro didn't force anything with the end of the day as a win. Every series is going to be different. I agree. I think the only thing about it is, Brady and Alex and we all talked about how this could be a Herro series because of the way that they play defense. Well, they haven't really played defense that way against him. Doc has been very clear from the beginning that Tyler Herro was the focus in a much smaller way. Okay. This reminds me of Avery Johnson in the 2006 NBA Finals, where Avery Johnson decided we are going to take Shaq away. Okay. Now that was diminished Shaq at that point. All right. Like that was not, even from the year before, he wasn't the same player as the Lakers. He wasn't the same player as 2005 Shaq. Probably should have won MVP. Avery Johnson decided during that series for Dallas, we are going to take Shaq away. And Dwayne was scoring 45 a night and he never really adjusted the strategy. Now, again, this is smaller scale. This is not Dwayne and Shaq. Okay. But he's made a decision, Doc Rivers, we're not going to let Tyler Herro beat us. That's an interesting decision when you have a guy in Jimmy Butler out there as well. And now, like I said, Doc suggested last night, in response to my question, that he may adjust this and double Jimmy. The problem with that is Jimmy's a really good passer, okay, with extremely high IQ, who understands his teammates. He may pick them apart. I don't know that doing either is really the strategy. If I were Philly, I'd play more straight up, but that's, I'm not Doc. All right, go ahead here. What else we got? This comes in from Chef for Macy's. Chances of Bam getting in the gym with Akeem. I think it helped me as a high post thread. I actually suggested this a couple weeks ago. I don't know if Akeem's still doing that stuff. I'll have to find out. Akeem is old now. When we talked about LeBron getting in the gym with him in 2011, that's 11 years ago, right? So I don't know if Akeem is still hosting that stuff. It'd be interesting to find out. It's a question maybe that's worth asking of Bam during the postseason. So perhaps I will. He does need some post moves. There's no question. You don't need to be a post player in the modern NBA. It's different. But he needs a go-to. He doesn't really have a go-to. He likes kind of going under the basket on the baseline. But as far as if he had one move that he knew he could get to, you think about, Patrick Ewing and kind of how he would get himself into the mid-range or, he's not going to be Kareem, obviously, but if he had one move, I think it would be helpful. That's interesting. Hakeem has just started working. Okay. So it's possible that he's out there. I was not aware he was still doing that work. Juan, what do you think Doc meant? We have some adjustments we don't want to make. Well, people took that as I took the tweet down because people misunderstood me. He didn't mean anything nefarious, like he's going to take out Jimmy's knees. What he meant, I believe, because Embiid followed on it and talked about how they were doubling him, and maybe we need to do the same thing to Jimmy. Clearly, it's about sending the double. That's what it's about. So I don't think they want to do it. I don't think. And this gets into that point we talk about whether Jimmy's a superstar, is that as much as some of the coaches talk Jimmy up, they don't really treat him like a superstar. Like at this point of the series, LeBron James would be doubled, okay, on every catch. They'd be trying to keep him from getting the ball, which would mean probably if he was still with the Heat, Eric would find a way to get him the ball up top a little bit more, but and move him around. But like with Jimmy, it's the coaches don't seem to want to go to that. There's a lot of fear of the Heat shooting, and we can say that's not justified in the playoffs because they haven't shot the ball that well. But it's there with Duncan, it's there with Tyler. To a certain degree, it's there with Strus. Teams just don't want to get beat by their shooting, and so Jimmy can operate pretty cleanly against most teams. The problem that Jimmy has, and we're going to see it in the next round if they get there, is again against length inside. And that's, Giannis guarding him is a different beast, and to be honest, when he's engaged with Tatum, it's challenging also. So that's where we're going to see the Heat have to make an adjustment. But for right now, if Doc's adjustment is just we're going to double Jimmy, Eric's been waiting for that. I don't know that that's necessarily going to work. Let's get to like 5 more here for sure. Yeah, Arbol. Why does national media in the U.S. never talk about the Chiefs or the Heat? Instead, they talk about the detriment of the Sixers. I mentioned that's not just the Sixers. Honestly, it was Atlanta. I didn't understand that. Like, I mean, who anointed Trae Young? It is always about the other team. I've tried to discuss this. My buddy George Sedano, who is kind of one of the few Heat voices, at ESPN, we've discussed this. He says the issue is that they just don't consider the Heat to be a sexy team. They view them as the Spurs. I think from a playing style standpoint, there are some comparisons to be made there. The unselfishness, some of the players kind of match up in terms of roles, but Jimmy's much more interesting than Tim Duncan, right? So that's the part I don't understand. I don't get. I mean, they've only gravitated towards Jimmy once, and it's when he got into it with his coach, which obviously, I mean, he has a good relationship with his coach, so the national media didn't understand that. But I don't understand why they don't find Jimmy interesting. I mean, I think Jimmy, in terms of Heat, I mean, I've been around since 1996. Jimmy's in the top 5 in terms of interesting Heat players for me. I'm not saying from a relationship standpoint. I'm just saying just to be at his press conferences and not know which direction he's going to go, and poking fun at other players and the Instagram stuff. And he's got commercials now. I don't really get why they don't find him interesting. And honestly, I don't know why they don't find Tyler interesting. I mean, he's kind of a unicorn in the modern NBA, right? Like, he has a following. I mean, some don't love Tyler, okay, for reasons, again, I don't understand, but he's somewhat polarizing. So between those, I know Bam is kind of, Bam's just a good guy. Like that, there's not a lot to go with Bam, but those two guys in particular, they have something to work with. They don't work with it. We'll see if they do, if they get to the finals. Danny, thoughts of the 10-man rotation early on in the game? I liked it. Look, if Eric's going to keep saying our depth is our strength, then use it. And it doesn't have to be for a lot of minutes. Like Caleb can give you 5 or 6 impactful minutes. Eric tried to use Derek Jones Jr. that way a couple of years ago in the bubble, and it didn't work. It's easier with Caleb because, no offense to DJJ, but Caleb's basketball IQ is higher than DJJ's. So Caleb's not going to hurt you when he's out there. He's just providing energy and athleticism. And his teammates like playing with him. So I like that move. I think Dedmon, to me, is a spot minutes player at this point. So you give him a few minutes, and then I was fine with the Duncan minutes. Although, like I said earlier, they didn't really utilize him. He was just sort of more out there to attract a little bit of attention. I'm gonna mention PrizePicks here, and then we'll come back. So hold that up 1 second. Well, I'll get back to that comment in a second. Do you want to mention PrizePicks.com? That's our official fantasy sponsor. Use the code 5 FIVE. Get your initial deposit match up to $100. It's real easy to download the app. The app is free, And again, you put down 100, they'll give you 100 to play with. You don't need to play it all at once. I got caught last night because I played Maxi over, but there's always another day. So get your initial deposit matched up to $100. You can play 2, 3, 4, 5 players together, depending on how much you want to risk, how much you want to win. You can play the power play, the flex play. You can play MLB. If you're a Panther fan tonight, you can play the NHL tonight. Actually, the NHL props are pretty easy if you know the game at all. And they do offer promotions during the day. They offered a promotion yesterday on Jimmy Butler, which a bunch of people took advantage of. So go to prizepicks.com, use the code 5 FIVE, and follow the content here on our channel. All right, let's I see Aaron just comment here. Grant Hill literally gave Spo credit for taking the South Beach for the reason they whooped the Sixers. I don't even know what to say at this point. Ronell, I think it's a testament to shooting. They don't want to double Jimmy. Correct. It's a testament to the fear of their shooting. And that's the other reason why when I was listening to the media talk about the Heat shooting this year and how bad it's been in the playoffs without acknowledging how good it was in the regular season, there's not a lot of context there. I mean, the Heat could go through a couple of weeks not shooting the ball well, and coaches are still going to respect that. So you just want to be in a pick your poison kind of situation. LeBron and Shaq always used to talk about that in Miami. Just give me some shooters and force the defense to make a choice. The choice that Doc Rivers has made in this series is we're not going to let Tyler Herro beat us. That's the choice. If you watch back to the games, you will see the way they're guarding Tyler, which is why I'm giving him a little bit of benefit of the doubt here for having, a subpar postseason, particularly this series. But we are going to need to see it at some point. There's no question. I mean, if Tyler is going to get out of the playoffs, and let's say that maybe they get through this round, but he ends up the playoffs, shooting 39%, 13 points a game, and then wanting the max, that becomes a more complicated conversation. Miami wants to take care of him. They want to keep him at this stage. But he has to break through this. This is part of the playoffs. Teams make adjustments to you. You make adjustments to them. So I liked what I saw in the fourth quarter yesterday. We'll see if it continues. All right. 5 more here. Or 4 more. We got to get Manny to work. Do you think Max played well enough to keep Duncan out of the rotation? I feel Duncan should get more minutes. I don't think Max is keeping Duncan out of the rotation. Now, we've said that if Max doesn't play well, he could go to Duncan earlier, but it seemed like Duncan was going to play last night no matter what. Okay. Now, would there have been more minutes if Max had played poorly? Perhaps. But, I don't know that that's a zero-sum game. Like we talked earlier in the year, like, okay, basically there were 48 minutes to split between the two of them. I don't think that's the case now. Now, they went to some unconventional lineups last night. I mean, Eric did. He's using the Depot Herro thing quite a bit now. And because of that, that does to a certain degree limit, the Duncan Max minutes where maybe there aren't 48 between them, particularly if you're sticking Caleb in there for a few minutes. So, yes, if Max plays well, it's one fewer guy that Duncan can replace on the court. But I still think that Duncan's going to get some occasional minutes. I think Eric's got a few more cards up his sleeve here. He has more cards to play than everybody else. People may say he doesn't have aces. Okay. He doesn't have a Giannis, but he's got some kings and he's got some jacks and there's some stuff that he can still play here going forward. All right. 3 more. Let's see. I feel like they need to start Tyler. Well, I felt that before the last game. So I guess I was wrong. I mean, I didn't think he was going to do it, but I thought he should do it just to get Tyler, more comfortable and so that they couldn't blitz him as much with Jimmy in the game. He did use, if you notice, though, he's made a rotation tweak from what he was doing late in the season and early in the playoffs where Tyler always came in for Jimmy. Tyler didn't come in for Jimmy last night. Jimmy played the whole first. He's also made another tweak where he has Jimmy starting the fourth quarter. That hasn't always been the case. You can kind of tell what direction Eric wants to go with some of those substitution patterns. He wants to get Tyler on the floor with Jimmy now. For a little while, it was replace Jimmy. I understand why he wants to get him on the floor with Jimmy because, again, Doc has decided to guard, Tyler in a certain way that it continues to create opportunities for Jimmy. So, Doc's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. As long as the Heat are playing with effort and they're shooting the ball well, which they did last night. All right, 2 more. Is Bam at the 5 going to work for a chip, or should Spo considering sliding him at the 4? I mean, if you're going to slide him to the 4, and I know this is a hot topic for Heat fans always, you have to have a 5 that you want to play over the other guys that you're going to play. And this is no disrespect, okay? Because I think he's a fine developmental prospect. I think he's worth continuing to develop this offseason. He works hard. He did show some things this year. The ball kind of finds him on rebounds. Omer Yurtseven is not ready to play consistent minutes in a high leverage playoff situation. He's just not. He's just defensively, his instincts are not there. So if people are saying you play Bam at the 4 so you can play Omer at the 5, I mean, if you're getting killed on the boards and you want to try it for a couple of minutes and we know that Omer can catch a lob, sure. But no. And playing Bam with Dedmon to me is a no-go. So look, they have a ton. They got 6 guards they want to play plus Caleb. Okay, 6 with Lowry's healthy. They got 6 guards they want to play, plus Caleb and Jimmy. And then PJ warrants minutes. So, I mean, you're going to play 2 bigs. You're taking away minutes from some of them. There's a conversation that be had every offseason about whether or not you need to get a big that you can play next to Bam instead of getting another guy like Tucker to play next to Bam. But this is not the time to make that adjustment. Okay. 2 more. I've been saying this for a minute. He needs to work on core strength. If we're talking about, are we talking about Bam or are we talking about Tyler? Because Tyler did work on core strength. I think you're talking about Bam. Probably. He put on weight this season, but I think looking at him, he's lost weight as the season's gone on. And he's never going to be a dump it down and bully people. But there are moments that he plays bully ball, and he does attack the rim, and he does have the putback slams and all of that stuff. I don't think that there's a fear of contact for Bam. I don't, people are saying he shrinks going against big centers. I don't see that. Okay. I think there's a confidence issue with Bam at times. And there's also a deference that he has. His personality is not, and this is again, no disrespect, he's not alpha by nature like Jimmy is. It's not his thing, but not every player has to be. Okay. But I don't think he's, I don't think he's, say, Jamal Mashburn or Eddie Jones, where we saw them shrink in the playoffs. I don't think that's the thing with Bam. I just think I just think sometimes he doesn't want to step on toes a lot of times. I mean, he kind of wants to get other people involved. I mean, it's why the dribble handoff with Duncan worked so well, but then it kind of became a detriment because it's like Bam was trying to get Duncan shots instead of the way it's supposed to work, which is that Duncan's gravity was creating opportunities for Bam to slip and roll, right? And so, I think it's a mindset thing, and he may never get there. He gets there at times, I think he can get stronger, but I don't think it's that like he sees Joel Embiid and he's afraid. I've never understood that narrative. Was he talking about Yurt? I'm sorry. He was talking about Yurt needing to get stronger. Well, all of that still applies. No, with Yurt, he does need to get stronger. But the biggest thing with Yurt is he needs to develop defensive instincts, and we'll see if those can be developed because he just looks lost on defense a lot, and they just don't put up with that very long. They disappeared KZ Okpala. Okay. If Yurt doesn't figure it out defensively, they'll disappear him too. But there's a little bit more to work with there. Sean Spencer, Bam is a young Jermaine O'Neal. That's an interesting comp. Once Jermaine kind of got into his prime, and I'm talking pre-Miami, I'm talking Pacers kind of before, Malice in the Palace, Jermaine had a pretty remarkable all-around game. Bam is a much more versatile defender than Jermaine was. Not that Jermaine was a bad defender, but offensively, though, Jermaine had a bag. And it took some time. He came in out of high school. He played behind 4 other bigs in Portland. By the time Jermaine got to Miami, the injuries had kind of gotten to him. I like Bam's mindset better than I like Jermaine's. I'll just leave it at that. All right, 2 more. Why not? Thanks again to Manny for producing. Thanks to PrizePicks.com, our fantasy sponsor. Use the code 5. Thanks to All Pro Construction. 2 more. I'll do them quick. J Mill, it's definitely confidence with Bam. We usually see performances last night when we're ahead, not when we need it. That's fair. I think there have also been times this year where Bam has been left out there alone on the court without Jimmy, sometimes without Tyler, sometimes without Kyle, and we have seen him take a step forward. I think it's somewhat confidence, but I think it is also his personality is to defer to others. He's a giving guy. I mean, if you know anything about Bam's, history, what he does in the community, his relationship, obviously, with his mom. But sometimes it is, he's not a natural killer in that regard, like Jimmy is. It's just that they're different in that way. Last one here. We thanks to everybody for joining. We're going to try to do these after games throughout the playoffs. Let's end it with a good one, Manny. Go ahead. Spectre, I'm glad the Heat finally stopped with a normal 8 to 9 man rotation. We have too many players. We should use them. And on that, as I said earlier, I agree. I thought Eric did a really good job last night in a lot of different ways. Obviously, it showed in the scoreboard, but the subtle things and some of it, like we talked about, was more strategy. The not switching as much with Bam on defense, and some of it is sometimes the other team comes out flat. You got to take advantage of it, and they definitely did. All right. Thanks again to our sponsors. Thanks to Manny. Thanks for all the questions. We will probably be back here. What's today? Wednesday. We'll probably be back here on Friday. New 5 on the floor tonight. And also make sure you're subscribing to the channel to get all of the rest of our content. Have a good day, everybody.